Hello, Dale the Librarian again. Now I want to talk about newspapers. Newspapers are a valuable thing because they're not necessarily scholarly, but there's many different opinions that come out by the hundreds every day. Newspapers as an industry is tapering down because they're moving away from print, but the online presence is arguably growing. So we'll take that as it may, but let me show you some of the things that you can look at with newspapers. First of all, when you're at the library homepage, there's a couple of ways of getting to newspapers. If you know the name of a paper, like the New York Times, you could go in and search for it here. But what I'd like to do instead is look through most of the English and there's some Spanish newspapers in North America today, or since in the last 10 years or so. If you go to research databases, these are collections of articles. Sometimes it's images, sometimes it's videos, sometimes they're scholarly, sometimes they're less so, like newspapers. But you can find our collection of databases here. You can go by subject. This is useful if you want to find communication and rhetoric. That's a great place to go for that one. You can go by type if you're interested in finding ebooks in particular. I don't use this one as often, but newspapers is in the list. It's worth mentioning. Or you can go by the name of the database. In this case, and there's a couple of newspapers databases, but the one that I'm going to use today is called ProQuest Newspapers. So I'm going to go to the letter P. And if you're off campus, by the way, log in up here at this off-campus access. Otherwise, there'll be things here that we subscribe to you won't have access to. ProQuest is what's called a database vendor, and there's many different ProQuests. You can see there's legislative and all their databases and things put together. We want the one that is ProQuest Newsstand. And you can see I already put my search terms in. I did a test search beforehand. You'll see this ProQuest interface. Don't get thrown off. If you're wondering where you're at, it'll always have the name of that particular database, so what it contains. When I'm searching for rodeo, I have to put the word "and" in between for some of these article databases. That just tells the database, look for this keyword. After you find that keyword, then find this keyword. And remember, I put it in quotes, so it would find that particular phrase. What you'll get with this, since it's newspapers, is they'll be talking to the high school rodeo association queen. They'll be talking to committees. They'll be talking to all sorts of things that you might think a journalist might be interviewing to get the story. And there's a lot of very local moments. So you can see that there's Houston, Texas, and there's the State Journal Register in Springfield, Illinois, and all sorts of things like that. All of those things are great, but I think you might be more interested in the metadata, so all the things that are in the facets on the side. The dates one is interesting. Each one of these probably represents a large it's a decade. So there's the 1990s, there's the turn of the century, and there's the 2010s. If you pull this out, you'll notice there's not a lot from the 80s. That's because they haven't digitized them yet, so don't worry about that. But I'm going to fast forward, so we're just in our current century, and it's updating. So there's 899 results. That's a lot to look through. But what you'll see is there might be a trend for your keyword searching. And that just means that there's an incidence of something showing up in the news more than other years. You might find that helpful, especially if something in particular happens. So say, for example, there was a rodeo where there was a protest and something happened and so on and so forth. So you can look at that. Another one, publication title, you can see where this shows up the most. So you can see if there's an area that's trending with that particular topic. And it looks like Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's very interesting. Let's see what other papers. Vancouver Sun. That's kind of, some of these might be just like big newspapers that just pick up everything. But this one's compelling. Does that mean that in New Mexico, animal welfare and rodeo is a hot topic there? You get to find out. And what you could do is just include it, apply, and then all of a sudden all the articles were going to be about that particular moment. And it looks like nothing is related. Oh, it's because they're doing a food drive at East Rodeo Road. Okay, So your librarian lesson of the day, metadata is not always reliable. Document type, these are the things if you want to find somebody who is being interviewed, or if there's an editorial letter to the editor, if somebody has died that has done something in particular. These are not particularly reliable because of the nature of newspapers, but it's worthwhile taking a look. When you want to see an article, say for example, this one looks pretty good. This database is all full text. Newspapers are not, they don't digitize them and then format it the same way you would see like in a print newspaper. This is the full text of it. Oh, it's interesting. This is Australia. So for what it's worth. These are great for looking at quotes. By the way, if you need to email yourself an article, a lot of these databases have an email feature. They also have a citation feature where it'll pop up whatever particular style you're looking for. If you're in communication, though, I would wager that you're looking for Associated Press style. I don't know why this isn't working, but I'll just, here's your style. But first, Associated Press doesn't show up in this database. So there's newspaper. That's one newspaper database. Another one that I would strongly encourage you to take a look at is a historic run of a newspaper. So ProQuest Newspapers goes back to mid-1990s. But there's several that are historic, and you could find them on newspapers. If this really resonates with you, let me know. But on this one, you can look at the complete run of the New York Times. Same interface, so don't forget that you have to look up here sometimes to see what you're looking for. So I'm going to do rodeo and, oops, I forgot my quotes. Animal welfare. There might also be moments where they call it animal care, animal rights. You get to figure out what that is. But you can see it goes back to 1967. And so here's somebody talking about rodeos, about animal welfare, but it is in a much more historic context. That's 1971. So take a look at the New York Times historic and see if you don't find something in there that might inform what you're talking about in the current context. It might be worthwhile. So I'm going to do another database video for you, but I'm going to put this one to a stop, and I hope you find this useful. Let me know if I can help you with anything.